Yo, what's up, Sci Fam? It's your boy Nickel here, and today we are going to create another science notebook page as we discuss the requirements for something to be alive, quote unquote alive. Okay, so if we think of something as being a living organism, we usually think about animals and plants, but also some cells just by themselves are actually alive. And so when we discuss this idea of being alive, let's identify what it means for these things to have that type of term attached to them, being alive. So the first thing that's required is that something that's alive needs to reproduce, which means simply that they need to make more of their kind. So if there's a bacteria that's alive, it needs to be able to reproduce to pass on its genetic information to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And so it has to reproduce, otherwise, well, it wouldn't be alive anymore. It would have died. So you got to reproduce, at least the kind, the population needs to reproduce. So maybe not every individual, but the population itself. In order for a species to continue being alive, they must continue to reproduce. So the first thing is to reproduce. The second thing is to be able to have some form of digestion. Now you're thinking, Nickel, you're crazy. Digestion? Not all things digest. But if you think about this idea of digesting information or digesting food to get energy, that's what we're discussing here when we talk about digestion, is that even cells need to get energy. And they do that by, got out of Y there. They get energy from their food. Now, not everything eats food like us. I'm going to put this in quotation marks because for some things, like a single cell, their food are molecules that are free floating around the environment that they're living in. And when we think about plants, their food, quote unquote food, part of it is actually sunlight. So they have to be able to do some type of digestion, which just basically means that they get energy from food. The third requirement to be quote unquote alive is being able to excrete. So we're going to say excretion is a requirement here. AKA, this just basically means that things need to be able to poop. Well, at least in humans, when we talk about excretion, that is what we do. We poop and we pee to get rid of the waste in our body. So other things also need to be able to get rid of waste. And so when they do get rid of that waste, whether it's a tree that's getting rid of the waste product that it makes, which is oxygen, it needs to get rid of that. It needs to be able to excrete it. Otherwise, it would actually kill the leaf if it continued to hold on to the oxygen. Just like in our bodies, we need to excrete CO2. We do that out of our mouth by breathing out. And so we excrete our wastes in multiple different ways. But most of the time when we think about excretion, we think about poop. But it's a lot of different ways that organisms can get rid of their waste. So in order to be alive, it has to be able to have the process of excretion to get rid of their waste. Also, in order to be considered alive, the organism must have some process of growth. Now, it doesn't mean it needs to get huge. It doesn't mean that it needs to get to some certain standpoint, but it does usually change in size. And so it might not change in size and get bigger, but it's either going to get bigger, so it gets bigger, or maybe it doesn't change in the actual size, but it becomes more complex. So when we think about growth, it can be size or complexity. So you could think about like a tadpole into a frog, or we could think about a tree growing taller and taller. The fifth and final thing that an organism needs to be able to accomplish in order to be quote unquote alive is they have to be able to adapt. Now, what this basically means is that they have to be able to maintain homeostasis, if you remember that word from a science notebook page that we did a while back. We need to get rid of some of this here. Respell this. Let's try this over. Homeostasis. H-O-M-E. Homeostasis. So homeostasis is that you can maintain a stable condition. So As humans, we maintain our heat. Our heat has to stay the same, so we shiver when we get cold to heat our body up, and we sweat when we get hot to cool our body down. So all organisms need to maintain that homeostasis in their environment. So if there's slight changes of temperature or even acidity, they have to be able to still maintain homeostasis, stay their same self without their changing environment. So all in all, when we think about these 5 different aspects of what it means for an organism to be alive, and then we think about us, humans. Let's think about humans and other complex animals, meaning like animals that, well, let's put this in quotations. Complex meaning that they're big, we see them around. We're basically all just a collection of specialized cells that are all working together. Because there is not one of our cells that doesn't do any of these things, but they themselves are not alive. But we, as an organism, are alive. And so the cells have decided to choose a task, work towards that task, work together with other cells in our body that are doing other tasks in order to keep us alive. On the other hand, there's some things that are one cell only, and they still maintain all of these things, and so we say that those single-celled things are alive. Hey, the more you know, the more you know. All right, cheers. See you on the next one.